Hello, we're live. Hi, this is Toby. With this stream, what I want to do is continue my effort, which I started last week, on building a deep zoom user interface for the Post-Mortem Debugger that I have built. So last week, at one point, I had the user interface look like this, where it had this code on the left hand side, and then the variables as they are set, the value of the variable that it got set to is displayed on the right. And then I went through a few different iterations of what it looked like, and then I brought in the deep zoom code. I just kind of stole some of the deep zoom code that I wrote for the file explorer, and currently it looks like this. I have a box that represents the call to the main function in the play programming language, which I'll just bring up the play programming language. In the play programming language, every program is supposed to have a main function. That's the entry point of the program. Okay, this is just to show the website for the play programming language. So we start with a call to the main function, basically, and then if you zoom in, you actually get to see the source code of the main function. And the idea is that for the function calls, if you zoom deeper in, then you'd actually drill down to the code within the fib function if you drill into the call of the fib function. And then you also get where there is variable assignment and state changes, you get to see the state right in line there on the right hand side. That's the idea. But I was kind of stuck last week. Excuse me. All right, sorry. I was kind of stuck last week at figuring out how I would do this zoom, the next level of the zoom, because this rendering of this text right here is done using a fit text function. All of this text here, I believe there's some blank spaces here that I added, which following the blank space, or I might have did a pad the source code with a certain column width here. So that's why we got some blank spaces here. But the point is that I got a string that is these lines with these new line characters at the end, and I have a text function that will fit this text within a bounding box that it is asked to fit them in. And this is how this text is being rendered. It makes the text as large, the font size as large as it can be, and still fit in this box, basically. Now, what I'm trying to solve for right now is after this fitting process, this sort of laying out and then figuring out what is the font size for this text should be. After all this process, I would like to draw a box around this function call, first of all. And then second of all, in the event that the zoom level is close enough to this function call, like I would draw a box around here, first of all. But in the event that the zoom level is close enough to, and the way I calculate that is I calculate the area, which is like width times height, right? That's the area. Area equals width times height. We learned that in high school. if the area of this box is like some percentage of the viewport area, which is this height, VP height, viewport height, and this is the viewport width, and then we're gonna have a viewport area, which is equal to viewport height times viewport width. If the ratio of area divided by viewport area, let's say if that ratio is more than 0.5 or something, then I'm gonna actually show more detail about that invocation of fib and actually put the source code of the fib function inside this box and render them. So I actually need to know what is this bounding box here, but right now that logic or that the determination of what the bounding box has to be is determined by this fitText function, which is only knowledgeable about text. It is not so knowledgeable about the idea of bounding boxes, and also doesn't draw the bounding box for me. So I mean, there's a couple of ways I could deal with this. One is let the fitText do its thing, and then I come back and ask it, hey, what font size did you end up choosing? And then based on that font size, I go back through this string that I generated, and I can use the offset numbers that I have in my AST nodes, because my AST nodes do have like line number information in them. Let me see if I have an AST node here. I actually don't. Oh, yeah, I actually don't have an AST node here. I'm actually gonna get one. To show you, in case anyone's watching. You know what? I'm also gonna log in via my phone to this stream. In case anyone is watching, I can know about it, and maybe I can answer any questions if there are any. Okay, I'm gonna say hello. Alrighty. Okay, there doesn't appear to be anyone logged in at the moment to this stream, but there might be, who knows. Okay, I wanted to show you an AST tree which looks like this. So an AST tree, each node of the AST tree actually has these line numbers and column numbers, and offset is just a different representation of the position. Offset is the offset index starting from the beginning of the string, whereas line and column is based on lines. You would first split on the new line character first before you determine the position. Okay, you can convert between these two representations interchangeably. So I could potentially use this information to go back in, and then based on the font size, and I can back calculate what this bounding box needs to be. However, I felt like if I did that, that is somewhat short-sighted, because in the future I may need to do more things to render this. Things like I might want coloring of some of the text, and I may want to draw arrows and lines and boxes, and like the fit text function doesn't draw a box for me and doesn't color text for me, so I might want syntax highlighting, I don't know. And also I realized last time that I never even thought about the objects, the data structures in the heap, like arrays and dictionaries, which would require additional space, and I don't even know how to render those things, and I haven't really thought that much about them, and I will need to eventually. So my point is, I may need to go beyond text here actually, and perhaps have like a fit something function that fits beyond text, but it can fit. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong project. So this fit text function here, let's see. Currently, it is able to fit fit a string basically, and it's not given a font size because the font size is what it's trying to figure out. What I'm saying is I need more than that, and what I think I need is sort of almost like I need to rebuild the DOM. Which sounds really onerous. I'm gonna rebuild the DOM. Why didn't I just use the DOM to begin with? And maybe that's another choice I could make. Instead of using Canvas, why don't I use the DOM and then scale up and down the DOM? There's something about Canvas programming that I really, really like over DOM programming, and I feel like I get more flexibility and more low-level control, and with this deep zooming kind of user interface, I think it makes sense. And also, I think I would be able to have more control over the performance of this thing if I did it with a Canvas. Of course, Canvas is still slow compared to WebGL, which is another thing I could use, but that is really hard to learn, and at a proof of concept level, I think I can get going faster just using the Canvas API. Perhaps once I figure this out, then performance still needs to be better. Then I might really dig in and learn WebGL and try to do it really fast. But all of that is to say, I think what I need is actually a dynamic layout framework. It's similar to the DOM in a way, but let me explain what I mean first. So I think I'm gonna need to represent these things in terms of boxes that can have padding, like the CSS box model. Well, they may or may not need, or padding could be represented in another way, perhaps. So let's say this is a box, and then I have this text rendered within the box, perhaps with a certain amount of padding or margin. So this could be padding, and then I have perhaps this box, and maybe this stuff over here that's also considered padding. And then I know this needs to be a box, so I need the system to know about this box actually. In HTML, this will probably be a span because we want its characteristics to lay out just like the normal text. Like we don't want it to be a standalone thing. We want it to flow within the text. Whereas this box is a thing that wants to stand alone. Maybe I'm not so sure. I haven't thought this fully through. So you could lay out algorithms. You lay things out horizontally and vertically. So let's say you have a box where you want to put things into it. I'm gonna put a box here, and then I want to put another box into it, And if I want another box of the similar size, this ran out of space. It's gonna have to go to the next one, and that's a example of sort of flow layout. But I could say, you know what? Another way I could do it is, you know what? The third box is just gonna have to make do with that restricted space. That's another way I could do it. And then also you could lay things out horizontally versus vertically. And there might be rules governing, like I want this to be, I don't know, 40% of the parent's width, this to be 40% maybe. You might have rules like that governing this. Now that I'm saying this out loud, I think I might have made something like this before. And I feel compelled to look at that code before I start. And then you can fit text, like you can say, oh, I want to fit some text into this box, and then maybe you're calculating, you're doing various layouts based on different font sizes. In my case, is this over engineering? I don't know. The key concept that one of the key concepts that is needed to make the deep zooming interface work is the concept that, hey, I have this box that's on the screen now. I need to render into it. Render whatever content you want to render into it in but I want you to scale to that box, so like maximize the usage of the real estate of this box in some way. So whatever, and you can decide based on how zoomed in you are, the level of detail you want to render. That's up to the discretion of the renderer, but whatever the renderer decides to display, it should scale it up to and maximally use the space that's available in this box. So that is a thing that is important here. So there could be places like you might say, I don't know, maybe you can render an image here. You can render an image here, blah blah blah. Maybe some text here. I don't know. There's a call out button. I don't know. And it could be that there's another box here, which is like, hey, more information. And when you zoom into this guy here, then there's even more detail after at a certain level of detail. More detail emerge. But at the current level of detail, you kind of want to maximize the usage of the space within this box. That's the key thing. And the way you have sort of do that, in order, like the fit text function, what it provides us is that it can make the text as large as it can be, which makes the text display very crisply and beautifully. So whenever there's text, it's the most legible that it can be, rather than like render it at a small lower resolution and then we scale it up that way. So the text is always rendered in a way that's as crisp as it can be, And also if we're drawing things like circles and curves, Bezier curves, etc., we also want to be drawing the curves at the maximum resolution for this current resolution. So if we had like I don't know, an infinity symbol, then the curve we also had the maximum resolution, which means we want to size the curve to use the maximum real estate inside this box. So maybe it's like maybe it's the infinity symbol. So we want to sort of oops. And perhaps even make the lines thicker, like that. I don't know, and color these guys in or something like that. If there's, you know, to make it look prettier. So that's the idea. How can that be done? How can that be done? I guess so one way to gradually make it more complicated perhaps is just say just say there are boxes. So perhaps this is a box, or maybe this is a box, and inside this box there's some text in it, in particular the letters 1 and 4, and then perhaps we want another box that has a certain, how can we even define what size the boxes are? That, like, what units are we going to use to define the box sizes? That's an open question too. So let's say this is another box that contains this text, and this is a box, and this is a box, and then this is also a box, but then this is a box with a different characteristic, and then this is a box, this is a box, perhaps this is another box with a different characteristic, and then perhaps each row is contained in a wrapper box and a parent box. So you got these nested boxes. 14, def main, like that, and then another box 15 print fib 7, maybe something like this, and so forth, and then to accommodate the state information, like here, yeah, like here, then we'll add another box perhaps over to here, and like extend this box perhaps, and then we have another box that contains like additional information here. And or we could have this be in a separate box perhaps. So then the alignment wouldn't be a problem. I'm not sure. Or we could do it based on width constraints. Like we want this to have a fixed percentage of width, this to have another fixed percentage of width, and so forth. So that could potentially turn into a pretty interesting, pretty complex and sophisticated framework if we were gonna do something like that. So I'm somewhat hesitant to build out something like this. But I do see its value though, because it can allow me to draw any kind, like I could say then within this box I want to draw this curve that could fit into this box-based framework. Okay, I guess what I'm trying to think of right now. So let's say I have this framework. Let's pretend. So right now I'm designing. I'm gonna make another note. And I'm gonna float it on top. And I'm gonna say I'm designing a layout box-based layout framework. And I'm actually thinking maybe I should design like start a new project to do this instead of doing that in this project. Okay, so I'm gonna do that. It might be I already made something like this actually. But I'm gonna make another directory. I'm gonna call this box layout. Again, I'm gonna use the my TypeScript template here, TS Web. So design about, I'm gonna make this font size bigger here. Okay. So I'm designing a box-based layout framework. Okay, I'm using Yeoman to generate myself a TypeScript-based web project, but without a web framework. This is what I like to do usually when building some canvas-based project. Can I turn off this preview here? Okay, I don't know how to turn off this preview. The stream says there's no data. The stream conditions are not great. So I'm actually gonna end the stream then.